Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at the top 10 best decks after the first balance patch in Voyage to the Sunken City. And let's start with a couple of a little bit controversial decks, maybe decks that I wouldn't exactly recommend for climbing, not wholeheartedly anyway, but that are above 50% and they seem to be more popular than they are good at the moment. So first of all, Anacondra Druid. For a while it looked to me like Druid is actually going to die in this balance patch, but the resurgence of control decks has saved Druid. Anacondra Druid is the strongest Druid archetype right now. It's stronger than a regular ramp Druid. And, well, Lady Anacondra Celestial Alignment. There are two main variants of Anacondra Druid being played. And the difference between the two is that you either use Spammy Arcanist or use the Escaped Mana Saber. Escape Mana Saber enables you to do your own plan a little bit more effectively, because then you get additional mana after Celestial Alignment, so you can do Alignment and Anacondra on the same turn. Whereas Spammy Arcanist is a little bit of something, a little bit of taking against Aggro Demon Hunter. Aggro Demon Hunter matchup is bad no matter which way you try it, but it's a little bit less bad and it's so popular that getting a few percentage points from Spammy Arcanist seems to be the right way to build Anacondra Druid at the moment. And control deck matchups are good for this one, so it's around 51% at the moment, whereas it looked like it was going down, but maybe it's stabilizing. And if control decks become even more popular, Anacondra Druid would benefit, so it has a chance to stick around in the meta. And coming in at number 9, the ninth best deck in the game at the moment, it's Quest Warrior. Hey, Quest Warrior is still around. Nerfed, but not beaten. Quest Warrior, there hasn't been a lot of innovation with Quest Warrior after the patch. I mean, this Quest Warrior list is the same list that I presented a week ago. No changes whatsoever. And at that point, it looked like there could be some improvements to the list, especially with those cargo cards. But right now, it seems to be doing fine. There's not much data on any of the alternatives at the moment. But Quest Warrior, because it's good against control decks, it's good against Mech Paladin, so even though it loses quite miserably to Aggro Demon Hunter, it's still finding some kind of a niche in the meta. It's also very easy to play, so Quest Warrior is performing better the lower rank you are. And as you hit Legend, it goes lower, but it's still like 52, 53, maybe even 54% around Legend ranks, so a playable deck even at those ranks. And the number 8 deck is a deck that I have seen a lot of talk about on Twitter, for example, that, oh my goodness, this is so good, this is the best deck ever. It doesn't look like it's the best deck ever, but it does look playable, and it is the Naga Mage. So you take the Naga Mage core, and you slash in Magister Dawngrasp, you put in Mortar's Fire Eye, you put in Reckless Apprentices, and you put in Wildfires. Wildfires synergize extremely well with Spiteless Sirens. Cheap spells, hey, that's always good. And even though now you're missing a little bit of that Naga side of things because you're carrying these other cards in your deck, Naga Mage sometimes has had problems finishing games. Sometimes you even fill the board, but you don't still get the kill. But this one with Magister Dawngrasp, that big hero power, Reckless Apprentices and Mortar's Fire Eye, has a little bit more firepower. It can go a little bit longer than Naga Mage usually can, so if your opponent just doesn't suddenly crumble when you go for your synergy turns, then you still have a little bit more power left. And that makes it a little bit more playable. It's still not a top deck. It's a little bit above 50%, 52, 53, somewhere around that, but it's good enough to see play. But Naga Mage is not even the best mage deck, because the best mage deck is Mech Mage. Yeah, Mech Mage, not a single card has been changed in more than a week in this deck, but it doesn't matter, the deck is still doing fine. Like, it's very one-dimensional, like all of these mech decks are, and it just does its mech thing. It has its good matchups, it has its bad matchups, and boom, you just go in, make some cheap mechs, Mega Shark your way through, and padow, hopefully win. A little bit more interesting deck is the number 6 deck, and that's Burn Shaman. There's been some evolution of Burn Shaman. We're seeing cards like Chain Lightning being used, we're using cards like Cookie the Cook being used, so we're seeing cards that make it possible to contest that early board, contest that Aggro Demon Hunter a little bit better. Burn Shaman is still not favored against Aggro Demon Hunter, but it's playable against that, so you can go into an Aggro Demon Hunter matchup and you can say, hey, I have a chance to win this. It's much closer to even than it is to being really favored by either side, and that is a lot. So Burn Shaman, you can freeze boards, you can now shoot some early boards with bioluminescence. If you have a few minions on the board, you can just give them a bunch of spell damage and then you can really do that burn. So it's an interesting deck. There's also some pretty sick moves that you can pull off with Bolner Hammer. We can with Brandborn Spear with this deck, and yeah, I kind of like it. Probably one of the most refreshing decks in this current meta. And because Aggro Demon Hunter is so popular, then counters to Aggro Demon Hunter are good. And one of those counters is Control Paladin. Control Paladin's main problem is that it's not the best control deck. It has a weakness against Control Warrior. And Control Warrior is just a superior control deck in every way. Running Kazakusan, it can just beat Control Paladins. It can still beat Aggro Demon Hunters. What is a Control Paladin to do? There are some attempts to build Control Paladin with a Kazakusan core, so using dragons and being able to activate Kazakusan, but that seems still to be weaker than just Control Warrior. And this Control Paladin approach, where you use Mr. Smite and then you can buff it up with Guardian's Grace, buff it up with Cariel's Hero Power, still seems to be the superior way to build Control Paladin at the moment. And Control Paladin, definitely a playable deck, but its problem is that it's only the second best control deck in the meta. And Control Paladin is also only the second best Paladin deck at the moment, although I still have difficulties believing that this would hold. Mech Paladin. Yeah, not a whole lot has happened with Mech Paladin. There's a couple of minor changes here and there, but largely it's still the same deck. You have those hand buffs, you have a lot of Divine Shielded mechs, they give more hand buffs. Samuro has been added, Battleground Battlemaster has been added, cards that were absent from the very first lists of Mech Paladin. Give it a little bit of board clear, give it a little bit of more power in hitting face. But other than that, just put your mechs into the deck and hope for the best. And there's so much value in Mech Paladin that this is very difficult for control decks to beat. But it is a little slow to get started, which on the other hand means that Aggro Demon Hunter has a field day against this one. So the previous 7 decks all had win rates above 50%, ranging from around 51 to like 56%. But then we have the top 3, and if you play the top 3 decks in like diamond ranks, you can expect win rates of like 60%. These top 3 decks are clearly above the others in performance. And number 3 in the top 3 decks is Control Warrior. And this Control Warrior list, I actually find this quite interesting, because this is running stuff like Azure Drake, for example. This is cutting those amalgams. Amalgam has not been a very strong card in Control Warrior. Lots of Control Warrior decks run it anyway, because obviously you need at least 4 dragons to activate Kazakusan. But for this one, those 4 dragons, Azure Drake, Raid Boss Onyxia, and then 2 copies of Onyxia and Drake, so that handles the activation. And that also leaves you with enough room to incorporate both Mutanus and Shadowhunter Vol'jin into the deck. And Vol'jin, of course, it can be used on your own minions or on your opponent minions. Very flexible tool in that regard. And yeah, Control Warrior, very, very strong defensive deck. Aggro Demon Hunters, Burn Shamans, Control Paladins, there's a lot of decks that this is very strong against. But it has its weaknesses. Mech Paladins, Quest Warriors, and Anacondra Druids. Those decks are very, very difficult to beat with a control deck. The number 2 deck in this meta is a deck that hasn't been mentioned a whole lot during this video yet. It's Quest Hunter, and the definitive feature of Quest Hunter is that this is the least polarized deck in the meta. There are a lot of matchups, like matchup against Control Warrior, like matchup against Aggro Demon Hunter. Okay, so maybe it's not exactly even, but it's not heavily favored in either direction anyway, so Quest Hunter almost always has a chance, except when you're up against Anacondra Druid. That matchup is terrible. But other than that, Quest Hunter, very strong deck. You play your quest, you start playing your spells. This version of the list decked with 2 explosive traps, because Aggro Demon Hunter is so common and you want to hedge your bets against that a little bit. And then, of course, it's a Drektar list, and pew pew. Shoot some spells, use some hero powers, win some games. But when it's all said and done, the best deck in the game is still Aggro Demon Hunter. It was one of the top decks in the game before the nerfs, and it was not touched. So yeah, it has weakness against control decks, but it's so dominant. It beats every other aggro deck. It beats every mid-range deck. So what are you supposed to do against this? It's just very, very difficult, and the hope of finding another aggro contender that would actually be able to beat aggro Demon Hunter, those hopes are getting slimmer by the day. Maybe it's still possible, we're still somewhat early after the balance patch, but it's not looking very good. This deck is just killing it on the ladder. Obviously, build around Rek'Thar, Kurtr's Demon Render. This version is the best performing version. Spectral Sights, Need for Greeds, Wings of Hate, which is not a token card in this one, it's a 1-drop. You really want that Wings of Hate to be used early in the game as an additional 1-drop in the deck, and that's just how you roll. So the balance patch definitely changed things. I'm not sure if it changed things for the better. The meta is very, very polarized. There's like Quest Hunter is the single non-polarized deck in the top of the meta. Everything else, it's rock, paper, scissors pretty much. But if you want to progress through the ladder, these are the best decks to do that. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and check out my Twitch channel.